Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Homage to the Blessed One, the Worthy One, the Supremely Enlightened One. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Namo Buddhaya. Fellow monks, meritorious lay disciples, today we have this very rare opportunity to come together and listen to the teachings of a supremely enlightened Buddha. The Supreme Buddha taught us that when we have the opportunity to receive advice from people, we should be very happy. When someone tells us that we've done something wrong, we should be very happy. But how do ordinary people think when someone points out something that they've done wrong? They get angry, right? They get upset. But the Supreme Buddha taught us, when we get advice from someone, when someone corrects us, we should be very happy. Just like someone was pointing out where to find a treasure. Right? If someone were to tell us where we could find a lot of money, would we be happy or sad? We'd be very happy. So in the same way, when someone gives us advice, when someone points out something that we've done wrong, we should be very happy. So there was someone who was very interested in getting advice in the time of the Supreme Buddha, and that was the Venerable Rahula. Do you know who the Venerable Rahula was? Who was his father? Yeah, the Supreme Buddha was his father. So he was very fortunate. He was very fortunate to have the Supreme Buddha as his father. And it's said that the Venerable Rahula was very interested in getting advice. That in the morning he would pick up a handful of sand and throw it into the air and say, "May I get as many pieces of advice as there are grains of sand in my hand." Right? Is that a little bit of advice or a lot of advice? That's a lot of advice. You'd be getting advice all day long that way, right? Is that a little bit of advice or a lot of advice? That's a lot of advice. You'd be getting advice all day long that way, right? But was the Venerable Rahula upset when people told him he did something wrong? No, he was very happy. He was very happy to get that advice. So we know that the Venerable Rahula's father was the Supreme Buddha. So did Venerable Rahula become enlightened just because his father was the Supreme Buddha? No. Right? So we can think, if for example, if our mother is a doctor, does that mean that we're a doctor too? No. That could be very dangerous if we thought that we were a doctor just because our mother was a doctor. Right? Someone told us, "Oh yeah, my side hurts a little bit." We could say, "Well, my mother's a doctor. I can fix that." Right? Start cutting them up. Does it work that way? No. If our mother is a doctor and we want to become a doctor, what do we have to do? We have to go to school. We have to go to medical school. We have to work very hard to study. So in the same way, Venerable Rahula had to work very hard. He didn't become enlightened just because he lived with his father. You know, the Supreme Buddha said, "You can be very close to me. You can even hold on to my robe. But if you're not following the precepts, if you have an evil mind, you're very far away from me." Right? So even though the Supreme Buddha was his father, he had to work hard at this monk life. So what does this mean, the monk life? What is it that the Venerable Rahula had to be doing? So he had to be following precepts, right? He had to follow precepts for his body, not to kill things, not to steal things from people, not to engage in sexual activity. He followed precepts with with his speech, not telling lies. He didn't gossip about people. He didn't use harsh speech. He didn't try to break up friendships. Right? So those are all things that he did as part of his monk life. As a monk, do you know what other things he had to keep? Other precepts he had to keep? He couldn't use money, right? Monks and nuns don't use money. So this is a special thing, more than what lay people have to do. Monks and nuns aren't allowed to use money. He couldn't eat after 12 o'clock, so he couldn't eat in the afternoon. He could only eat in the morning time. Right? He could only use things that people gave to him. He couldn't have a job and go out and make money and buy whatever he wanted. He had to be happy with the things that people gave him. He didn't hurt people. He didn't hit people. Right? All these are part of his monk life. He also had to pay very close attention to what he was doing. He had to be mindful when he was walking, when he was standing, when he was sitting, when he was moving his arms and legs. He had to be very aware of what it was that he was doing. He had to practice contentment. He had to be happy with whatever few things that he had. If he sat around thinking about wanting other people's things, he wasn't practicing the monk life. He had to be happy with the food that people gave him, with the robes that he had to wear. So all these things are part of his monk life. This is what it means to lead the life of a monk or a nun. So not only that, he had to restrain his sense faculties, right? He had to pay attention to where his eyes were going, right? That he wasn't looking at bad things. He had to pay attention to what he was listening to, that he wasn't listening to bad things, that he listened to good things, right? Restraint with the nose, right? So when he smelled some delicious smell, he didn't get greedy for that smell. He didn't go to the kitchen and, what are you cooking? What's for Donna today, right? So he restrained his nose. He restrained the smelling. Tasting in the same way, when he tasted very delicious food, not to get greedy for more of that food, thinking, oh, I hope this person offers Dana tomorrow too, right? So all of this is part of his monk life. These are all very important parts of the monk life. Not only that, but he practiced meditation as well. Very peaceful kinds of meditation, loving-kindness meditation, anicca bhavana, all sorts of meditations. These are all parts of his monk life. So today we have the opportunity to listen to a sutta, to listen to advice that the Supreme Buddha gave to his son Rahula. So this is the Ambalattika Rahula Vada Sutta from the Majjhima Nikaya. So once the Supreme Buddha was living in the bamboo grove, and the Venerable Rahula was living at Ambalattika. And then the Supreme Buddha went to go see his son, Rahula. And Rahula saw him coming in the distance. And of course he was very happy to see the Supreme Buddha. So what do you do when you see the Supreme Buddha coming? You get things ready. You get things ready because the Supreme Buddha needs a place to sit and he needs to wash his feet. So the Venerable Rahula got together a place to sit and he got together a bucket with water so the Supreme Buddha could wash his feet. You know, in India, people walk around outside and there's lots of dirt and lots of dust and all sorts of things you can step in. So when you sit down in a clean place, you want to wash your feet first. So the Venerable Rahula got some water ready in a bucket with a little cup so the Supreme Buddha could wash his feet. So then the Supreme Buddha came and he washed his feet and he sat down. And when he was finished washing his feet, he took the cup that he had used to pour water on his feet and he left a little bit of water in that cup. And the Supreme Buddha said, Rahula, do you see this little bit of water that's left in the cup? And the Venerable Rahula said, yes, Venerable Sir, I see that little bit of water. And the Supreme Buddha said, just like there's a little bit of water in this cup, there's only a little bit left to someone's monk life when they're not ashamed to tell a deliberate lie. So, what's a lie? A lie is when we say something that's not true, right? And we do it on purpose, and we know that it's a lie, right? It's not like when we make a mistake and someone asks us, so where's your mother? And you say, oh, she's upstairs, my mother's upstairs, but really she's in the basement, right? That's not a lie, because you thought that she was upstairs. A lie is when someone says, you know, where's your mother? And you say, she's in the basement, but you know she's actually upstairs, right? So that's a deliberate lie. The Supreme Buddha says, just like there's a little bit of water left in this cup, there's only a little bit left to the monk life of someone who's willing to tell a lie without any regret, who they don't feel any shame when they tell a lie. So let's think about that. Think of all those things that someone has to do as part of their monk life, as part of their nun life. Keeping all those precepts, restraining their senses, being content with things, being aware of all their bodily movements, right? The Supreme Buddha says, if you're willing to tell a lie, there's only a little bit left of your monk life. Only a little bit left of that. So do you think telling a lie is a serious thing or not such a big deal? It's a pretty serious thing. It can be very easy to tell a lie, can't it? If you want to steal something, you have to actually go and find something that belongs to somebody else to steal, right? But a lie, we can say a lie very quickly. You know, as quick as you can blink, you can say something that's not true. But it's very serious. So then the Supreme Buddha, he took that water that was in the cup and he threw it away. And he asked the Venerable Rahula, do you see how that water's been thrown away? And he says, yes, Venerable Sir. The Supreme Buddha says, in the same way, when someone is not ashamed to tell a lie, they've thrown away their monk life. They've thrown away all those wholesome things that they've done, right? All that time that they've spent cultivating good things. If someone's willing to tell a lie and not feel any shame, they throw away all those good things. We can think about it. You know, if you do something bad and you're willing to tell a lie to cover it up, you can do all sorts of things, can't you? Right? If someone doesn't feel afraid to tell a lie. So as part of this monk life, what's the goal of this monk life? Why do people live the monk life? Why do lay people take the precepts and follow the teachings of the Supreme Buddha? To put an end to this round of samsara, right? And to do that, what do we need to do? We need to see things like they really are. We need to understand the Four Noble Truths. We need to understand how this world works, the nature of this world. And if we're willing to lie about things, if we don't care about the truth, how can we care about seeing things as they really are? If we're willing to twist the truth around, willing to lie, we've lost our commitment to seeing things as they really are, to really understanding suffering and the cause of suffering, the way that leads to the end of suffering. So far the Venerable Rahula has gotten 2 pieces of advice, and the Supreme Buddha has more advice for him. Then he takes the water cup and he turns it upside down. And he says, Venerable Rahula, do you see how this cup has been turned upside down? He says, yes, Venerable Sir. The Supreme Buddha says, in the same way, someone who's willing to tell a deliberate lie, they've turned their monk life upside down. They were trying to cultivate wholesome things, and what have they done? Cultivated unwholesome things, trying to do good things, and now they've done a bad thing. They're trying to put an end to this round of samsara, and what have they done? They've tied themselves even tighter to this round of samsara. when we keep the precepts, what can we know about our destination in future lives, right? Are we born in a good place or a bad place? A good place, a heavenly place maybe, or as a human being in a fortunate situation. But when we break the precepts, what happens? Are we born in a good place or a bad place? A bad place, right? Maybe as a ghost, as an animal, in the hell realm. So this intention that someone has to put an end to this round of samsara, or at the very least, to develop wholesome qualities and have a fortunate birth in the future, they've turned that completely upside down, and they can be sure that they'll receive bad results in the future. So then the Supreme Buddha says to the Venerable Rahula, he takes the cup and he shows him. He says, "Do you see how empty this is? How completely hollow this is?" And the Venerable Rahula says, "Yes, I do." And the Supreme Buddha says, "This is how empty your monk life is, if you're willing to tell a deliberate lie." So, monks and nuns, when we break a precept, we have to tell one of the other monks, right? So, and we have to be able to trust each other, that when we've done something wrong, that we tell the truth about it. If someone asks us, "Did you do such and such a thing? Did you eat in the afternoon? Did you use money?" Something like that. Then we have to be able to say, "Yes, it's true, I did that." Because if we can't admit that, then are we going to change our behavior in the future? No. We'll just keep doing the same thing again and again. So in this way, the Supreme Buddha says the monk life is completely empty. There's no point to it. All the difficulties that someone undergoes, giving up the comforts of living at home, being close to family, all these things are for nothing. It doesn't have any benefit if someone's willing to tell a deliberate lie. Then the Supreme Buddha gives the Venerable Rahula a simile. He says, suppose there's a great big elephant, a royal elephant, with huge tusks, right? And a great big trunk, very strong, very tall. And this elephant has been trained in battle. So he's not just an elephant that's used in parades, but he's a fighting elephant used when the king goes to battle. So he says, suppose there's this very strong elephant, and he goes into battle. And this elephant will use his front legs to fight. He'll use his back legs to fight. He'll use the front part of his body. He'll push up against things. He'll use the back part of his body. He'll sit down on somebody if he has to, right? He'll use his tusks. He'll dig into things. He'll pick up a chariot and throw it away, right? He'll use his tusk. He'll use his tail. He'll even use his ears, right? He'll flap his ears to try and scare someone away, right? He uses all these things, but he doesn't use his trunk. He doesn't use his trunk to fight. And so the person riding the elephant thinks, this great big elephant, this king's elephant that's been so well trained, he's willing to do a lot. He's willing to use his front legs, his back legs, the front part of his body, the back part of his body. He's willing to use his tusks. He's even willing to use his ears, right? But he's not willing to use his trunk. So the elephant rider can know, this elephant, he's not really committed to the king. He's not ready to give up his life to protect the king, to win the battle that the king wants to fight. But then imagine at a later time, this same elephant, he's big and strong, and he's willing to use his front legs, his back legs, the front part of his body, the back part of his body, his head, his tusks, his ears, his tail. And now he's willing to use his trunk, right? He'll even take his trunk and stick it into danger, try to grab away weapons from someone. So then what does the elephant rider think? He thinks, now this elephant, he'll do anything. This elephant would even be willing to die for the king. He'll give up anything for the king. Then the Supreme Buddha said to the Venerable Rahula, "So too, Rahula, when one is not ashamed to tell a deliberate lie, there is no evil, I say, that one would not do." So he says, once someone is not ashamed to tell a lie, they can do anything. They can kill, they can steal, they can break up friendships very easily, right? You can spread lies about people, make people hate them. So if you're willing to tell a lie and you don't have any shame, there's nothing that can stop you. There's no bad things that you can't do. And then the Supreme Buddha told him, "Rahula, even as a joke, you shouldn't tell a lie. Even if the person knows that you're just joking, you shouldn't tell a lie." Imagine how serious this is, right? In the world with ordinary people, everyone thinks it's fine to tell a lie as long as you're joking, right? Because it's good to make people laugh, so tell a little lie here and there, have a little bit of fun. But the Supreme Buddha says no. This is a very serious thing that we're doing. And telling a lie is so serious that even if the other person knows that you're just joking, that you're not being serious, that still we shouldn't tell that lie. There are many ways to enjoy ourselves with other people, right? Even many ways to make people laugh, to make people relaxed, right? We don't need to use telling lies as one of those things. People enjoy hearing lies, right? They pay a lot of money to listen to comedians stand up on a stage and tell lie after lie after lie, right? It's a very ordinary thing in the world. But when someone's undertaken this training, it's not a way that we can enjoy ourselves anymore. So do you think that this is advice just for monks and nuns? Was this personal advice to his son from the Supreme Buddha? Is it only Venerable Rahula that shouldn't tell lies as a joke? No. Whether we're a monk or a nun, a layman or a laywoman, adult or child, these instructions are for all of us, right? So we can work very hard to avoid doing this. It's very easy to get caught up in telling lies, especially when we associate with people who think that it's okay. So as we choose those people that we want to hang out with, we can listen very carefully to their speech. Are they telling lies? Do they tell jokes and use lies to entertain people? So we know that if we associate with people like that, if we hang out with people like that, it's going to be very easy for us to act in the same way. Then the Supreme Buddha asks the Venerable Rahula, "What is the purpose of a mirror? What do you use a mirror for?" Do you have a mirror at your house? Yeah, of course you do. Do you have more than one mirror? Yeah, lots of mirrors, right? Why is that? Do we just like shiny things? Do we keep them in our house because they're shiny? No. What do we like to do with a mirror? We like to look at ourselves, don't we? We like to see what we look like. A lot, right? If we have them in lots of different places. In every bathroom, you probably have a mirror. Maybe by the front door, you have a mirror so you can check what you look like before you go outside. Do you have food on your face? That sort of thing. Are you dirty? Right? It seems that we care a lot about mirrors and what we look like. So the Supreme Buddha asked the Venerable Rahula, "What do you do with a mirror? What's the purpose of a mirror?" And the Venerable Rahula says, "The purpose of a mirror is for reflection, so we can see ourselves, so we can see what we look like, right? Because maybe we can see our hand if we stick it out, but our face, right, the top part of our body, we can't see what that looks like. So we need a mirror to reflect." The Supreme Buddha says, in the same way, an action that we do with our body, we should do that after reflecting on it. An action that we do with our speech, we should do that after reflecting on it. An action that we do with our mind, we should do that after repeated reflection. So it's very easy to understand about the reflection of a mirror. Right? We can see our face in the mirror. We can look at our reflection. But how is it that we reflect on an action? Right? It doesn't mean that we look at that action in the mirror, that we take a mirror around with us and hold it up and see what our actions look like. No, it's not like that. That's not how we do this. What does it mean to reflect on an action? So the Supreme Buddha gives us very clear instructions, gives these instructions to his dear son, Venerable Rahula. He says, before you do an action with your body, you should think about it. You should think, is this action that I'm about to do with my body, is this harmful for me or beneficial for me? Is it going to lead to bad things, or is it going to lead to good things? Is it going to be bad for other people, or is it going to be good for other people? Is it going to be bad for both myself and for other people, or is it going to be good for both myself and other people? So this is what it means to reflect on an action. Right? We do a lot of actions all day long, don't we? We do a lot of actions with our body. So the Supreme Buddha says we should think about those actions before we do them. And what is it that we're trying to think about? Is this action good for me, or is it bad for me? Will it have good results, or will it have bad results? So maybe first thing in the morning, right? You're laying in bed. What's the first action you have to do with your body? Get out of bed, right? That's the first action that you have to do. So, what if you don't think about that action? What if you don't think, it's really good for me to get out of bed. I need to get started, right? If I don't get out of bed soon, I'll be late. I'll make everybody have to rush. Maybe I'll miss the bus for school, right? So if you don't think about that action of rolling back over and falling back asleep, you're not gonna get out of bed. You're not going to think about the bad results of that action. So the Supreme Buddha said that when you think about these bodily actions, if you realize that this action is bad for me, it's bad for other people, it's bad for both of us, there's going to be bad results, do you think you should do that action or not? No, we shouldn't do that action. We should avoid that kind of action. But when we think about an action with our body, and we think, this is actually going to have good results for me, it's going to have good results for other people, then the Supreme Buddha says we should do that action. We should do those sorts of things. So, for example, maybe you're at school and you see that someone else doesn't have very much to eat, right? And so you think, oh, maybe I should give them part of my lunch, right? So you think about, okay, is this a good thing to do or a bad thing to do, right? Is it good for me or bad for me? Is it good for them or bad for them? So when we give someone else something to eat, is it good for them or bad for them? It's good for them, yeah. And maybe we think about ourselves and we think, well, if I give this person part of my sandwich, maybe that's going to be bad for me, right? I'll have a little bit less to eat. But is that how the Supreme Buddha taught us to reflect on giving? No. See, this is why we have to think a lot. We have to think very carefully. Because what did the Supreme Buddha say is the result of giving, even a small little gift? Did he say the results are small or the results are big? The results are very big. Right? So we can't just think about the results of our action in this moment, in this present life. The Supreme Buddha said that when we practice generosity, that the positive results that we get from that gift are very great, Even if we give a little bit of food to an ordinary animal, the Supreme Buddha said that the results come back to us 100-fold, right? Let alone to a human being. Think about the results of giving to even just an ordinary human being. So this act of giving something to someone that needs it, is that a good action or a bad action? It's definitely a good action. It has good results for both ourselves and for other people. It has good results for both of us. So the Supreme Buddha said, yes, you can do that action. You should do those sorts of things. So this is the first time period before we do an action. So when we think about things very carefully, when we're very aware of our bodily actions, it's easy to reflect before we do something. But sometimes we start doing things and we haven't thought about it, right? Has that ever happened to you? You're doing something and you realize you never thought about what the consequences were of doing that action? The Supreme Buddha knew that this is the case, that we're not always able to think about things. As long as our mind is still bound to this samsara, we're not always mindful. We can't always reflect before we do something. So do you think that we should just give up once we've started doing something with our body? Should we just, I started, might as well keep going? Does that sound like the instructions of the Supreme Buddha? No. He said, while you're doing something, you can think about the results of those actions. Is this good for me? Is this bad for me? Is this good for other people? Is this bad for other people? Right? So, say there's an insect in your house, right? Maybe an ant or a fly. And the fly keeps landing on your face. Maybe it lands on your food. And so you pick up a stick, you pick up a book, and you try and hit the fly, right? But you miss. So you're doing this action, you're trying to kill this fly. Now, is it good for the fly to smush it? No, it's not. Is it good for you to kill this fly? No, definitely not. Definitely not. Bad results. Bad results. But you've already started. I mean, you already tried once, right? So you might as well just keep going. Does that sound like what the Supreme Buddha tells us to do? No. As soon as we realize, oh my goodness, what am I doing? Right? See, we have that anger, and we just act on that anger that we have towards that fly. We think, oh, it's just a little fly. Maybe it'll be reborn somewhere better if I kill it, right? That's not what the Supreme Buddha teaches us to do. That's not how we're supposed to reflect. The Supreme Buddha said, you shouldn't want to kill even a small ant, like even the tiniest insect, we shouldn't want to kill. So once we've thought about it, we put the book down, right? We just shoo the fly away, or maybe we try and catch it, right? Try and catch it with a glass and take it outside, right? So just because we've started an action with our body doesn't mean we need to keep doing it. So first, the Supreme Buddha tells us, think about things before you do them. Reflect on them. Specifically, is it good for me or is it bad for me? Is it good for other people or is it bad for other people? And he says, also, while you're doing an action, think about it. Is it good for me or bad for me? Right? Maybe you thought about it before, and so you decided to do it. But does that mean that you shouldn't think about it while you're doing it? No, the Supreme Buddha says, think about it in these different times. So maybe you're walking home from school and one of your neighbors has an apple tree. Right? Apples growing on it, and there's many, many apples on the ground underneath the tree. And so you look at those apples, and you think about your stomach, and you look at those apples some more, and you see that, some of them are rotting, right? It doesn't look like they care about those apples very much. So you think, if I take that apple, it'll be good for me, because I won't be hungry, and they won't mind. They don't care, right? They just let their apples fall on the ground, right? So you pick up the apple and you go, right? You've taken that apple. So while you're walking away with that apple, can you still think about that action? Yeah, you can keep thinking about it. So as you're walking, you're thinking, you know, this isn't my apple. This doesn't belong to me. What if somebody saw me take that apple, right? What would they think about me? They wouldn't trust me. They'd think I'm the sort of person that doesn't care about other people's property, right? It doesn't matter whether or not that person lets all their other apples rot on the ground. That apple doesn't belong to me. It's not mine. So what do you think the Supreme Buddha says we should do if we're doing an action and we think about it and it's not good? What should we do? We should stop doing that action, right? We can take that apple, we can walk it right back to that house and put it right back under the tree, right next to all those other apples, and we can walk away happily, thinking, you know, I was doing something bad, and then I came to my senses. I realized that was not a good thing to do, right? Okay, so there's another time period. When is that? Afterwards, right? Say you got home and you cut that apple up and you ate it bite by bite and it was really tasty, right? So you did it. You took the apple, you walked it home, and you ate it. Can you still think about that action? Absolutely, you can think about it, can't you? You can think about that action for the rest of your life, in fact. So, in the same way, the Supreme Buddha says we should reflect on actions after we've done them. We should think, was this good for me? Was it good for other people? Did it hurt me? Is it going to have bad results? Or is it going to have good results? Is it good for people that I took that apple? Or is it bad? Right? Is it good for me or bad? And then the Supreme Buddha says, if when you think about it, if you think about that action, and you realize it was a bad thing to do, he said, you should confess that action to the teacher. So if you're a monk, you should confess it to another monk, to your teacher, right? Your companions in the holy life. You should confess it to those other people that are trying to keep the precepts. So when you've gotten home and you've eaten that apple and you think about it and you think, oh boy, I should not have done that. And I can't do anything now. I can't give the apple back, right? But what can we do? We can confess that action. We can go to our parents and say, oh, mother, father, you won't believe what I did. I took this apple and I ate it and I enjoyed it, right? But now I feel really bad because it wasn't my apple, right? People won't trust me. And maybe your mother, father say, okay, well, let's go and talk to that neighbor. You can ask them for forgiveness, right? So any action, even if we've thought about it beforehand, right? Because maybe beforehand we don't quite get the results. We don't realize the danger involved with that action. So while we're doing it, we think about it. We keep checking. Is this still okay to do? Have I noticed any bad results that are going to come from this? And even afterwards, right? For a lot of actions, all we have is the afterwards. It's very hard to think about things beforehand. We have to have a lot of mindfulness. So we can't give up just because we've done something and didn't think about it beforehand, or we've done something and we didn't think about it while we were doing it. The Supreme Buddha gave us all 3 times to reflect on actions. So even at the end of the day, we can reflect on the actions that we did, how we all the things that we did with our body. And we can think, you know, is this a good thing or a bad thing? And the Supreme Buddha said, if you do an action with your body and you think about the results, and you know that it has good results, that it's a wholesome action, good for you, good for other people, then you should be happy. You can have a happy mind. So this is another very special thing about the teachings of the Supreme Buddha. He encouraged us to think about our good actions as well, not to just think about our bad actions. So whenever we practice dana, whenever we give something to someone, you know, that first example of giving food to someone at school that needed food, at the end of the day we can think about that. We can think, you know, I didn't really even notice that I had a little bit less food, but I'm sure that other person they had less hunger today because I gave them some of my food to eat. And we can have a happy mind, knowing, I'm a generous person. I'm someone who doesn't like to see other people suffer. And when we have a happy mind like that, our mind becomes peaceful. So the Supreme Buddha encouraged us to think about the good actions that we've done as well, and have a happy mind, training in this way. So, actions with our body. How else can we do actions? With our speech. We can do actions with our words. So the Supreme Buddha gave the same advice for those actions that we do with our speech. Before we're going to say something, think about it. Is this good for me? Is this good for other people? Will it have good results for me? Will it have good results for other people? We think about what we're going to say before we say it. Because once you say something, you can't unsay it. That's the tricky thing about words. Once you say something to someone, you can't take it back. You can say, I take that back. But still, you've said it, right? They've heard it. So you can't erase that. There's no backspace. No backspace button with our mouth. So the Supreme Buddha says we have to be very careful with what we say. We should think about it, right? Say someone has done something wrong, and they shouldn't have done that thing, and we think, they should be happy if I correct them, right? The Supreme Buddha said that we should be happy when someone corrects them. So I'm going to yell at them. I'm going to yell at them a lot, and maybe they'll remember what they've done wrong, and they won't do it again. So I'm going to yell at them. Then we stop and we think, is that going to be good for them if I yell at them? Will that have good results? Will that get the job done if I yell? Will it be good for me? Will I look good if I start yelling at them? You think, no, that's not a good thing to do, right? Maybe I should wait until I'm not so angry, and then use my speech to try and help someone. So we think about how we use our speech before we're going to do it. And if we know it's not going to have good results, maybe that person, we know they're not going to listen and it's just going to make them mad, then we hold our tongue. We don't say anything. But if we think about it and we think, I can speak very peacefully to them, with a lot of compassion, maybe just give them a little hint, and we know that it'll be good for us, it'll be good for the other people, then we can go ahead and use that kind of speech. So that's the before time. What's the next time period? While we're doing it. So even while we're talking to someone, even while we're using our voice, we can stop and we can think, is this a good thing to be doing, or is this a bad thing to be doing? Say we're talking to someone and they ask about someone else. They say, do you know where I didn't see so and so in school today? Right? Do you know where they were? Do you know what happened to them? And we do know. We know something very juicy, some gossip about them, right? We do know. So we say, oh yes, I do know where they are. And then you think, ooh, do I really want to say that? Right? Do I want to be the kind of person that gossips about other people? Right? So do we have to tell once we've started talking? No, we can think about it. We think, it might be a lot of fun to gossip, but it's not good for me. It's not good for other people too, right? They're going to spread things around. So, we can just change the subject. We can say, yeah, I know where they are. They're not here. That's for sure, right? You haven't told a lie, and maybe they won't, maybe the other person will start thinking about something else, right? So even with our voice, we can stop saying bad things, right? If we realize that it's not a good thing to be doing. And then what's the third time period? afterwards, right? So even after we've said something, the Supreme Buddha taught us, we can reflect on what it is that we said. We can think, was this a good thing to have said, or was this a bad thing to have said? Did I benefit by saying that? Did other people benefit by saying that? And we can think, if it was a bad thing, we can confess to our parents, to other people who are keeping the precepts with us. We can say, I did this bad thing with my voice. And if it's a good thing that we did, using our speech, then we can be happy, right? Maybe we shared a little bit of Dhamma with someone, and we realize, that was a good thing to do. It helped them, right? It was beneficial for me because I got the merit of sharing Dhamma, and it was beneficial for them as well because they got to hear the Dhamma. They got to practice correctly. So the first kind of action, bodily action. Second kind of action, verbal action. What's the third kind of action? Mental action. So even when we think about things, we're doing a kind of action, right? And the more we think about things, the stronger those thoughts become. So the Supreme Buddha told his son Venerable Rahula, even the thoughts that you have, even the thoughts that you think, you should reflect before you spend time thinking about them. Say an angry thought. Someone does something bad to you, right? So before you start to have an angry thought, think about it. Am I going to be better off if I keep thinking angry thoughts about this person? No. It doesn't. There's no benefit from thinking angry thoughts. If I have jealous thoughts about maybe someone else's house, someone else's car, is it beneficial for me to sit and think greedy thoughts about how much I want to have that car? No. It's a waste of time. So the Supreme Buddha said, before you have those thoughts, while you're having those thoughts, even after you've had those thoughts, you can reflect. Are these kind of thoughts good for me, or are they bad for me? Right. So if they're bad kind of thoughts about anger, thoughts about other people's bad qualities, we can stop thinking those thoughts. We can, if we find that we're thinking about someone's bad qualities, we can switch and we can start to think about their good qualities. But if we're thinking about someone's good qualities, we can reflect, this is a good thing to think about someone's good qualities, to remember how lucky we are to be surrounded by people with good qualities. Right? So we can know this is a good way to spend our time. So if we realize that we're thinking bad thoughts, we should stop thinking those thoughts. We shouldn't think them in the first place. We should stop them if we are. If we already did, the Supreme Buddha said that we should feel embarrassed, right? We should feel humiliated that we thought those kind of thoughts. And we should make the determination not to think those kind of thoughts again in the future. He didn't say that we should confess those thoughts to someone, right? So if you're angry at your parents, maybe you've been mad at your father, mother all day long, thought really angry thoughts, the Supreme Buddha says, you make the determination not to think those thoughts again. You don't have to confess. You don't have to say, oh, mother, father, I've been thinking angry, terrible thoughts about you all day long, right? He doesn't say that. He says, make the strong determination. Remember how dangerous it is to have these kind of thoughts. Then the Supreme Buddha told his son, the Venerable Rahula, he says, anyone in the past, any recluses and Brahmins who've purified their actions, have done it in this very same way. So anyone that's ever purified their mind, purified their body, purified their speech, this is exactly how they've done it. Right? How fortunate we are to learn this universal way that we can all purify our actions. He said, anyone in the future who's going to purify their actions, they'll do it in the very same way, by repeatedly reflecting on them. And anyone right now who's purifying their actions, they're doing it in the same way, by thinking about their actions before, thinking about their actions while they're doing them, or thinking about their actions afterwards. So he says, Rahula, train in this way. Think about your actions before you do them. If they're harmful, don't do them. If they're good, then keep doing them. While you're doing, you can stop. Don't be afraid to stop doing a bad action. And afterwards, think about your actions. Reflect at the end of the day. Think, did I spend my day doing good things or doing bad things? So when the Venerable Rahula heard all of this advice, do you think he was happy or sad? He was very happy. He was very happy because the Supreme Buddha taught him this way to put an end to the round of samsara. So, because of not knowing this way of reflecting on our actions, because of not knowing how to think about our actions while we're doing them, before we do them, and after we've done them, we've been born again and again in this long round of samsara, in many bad destinations. So may all of us keep this teaching in mind. May we all remember the power that we have to reflect on our actions, to change our behavior. May we keep this teaching in mind wherever we go, in all the actions that we're doing. May we reflect on this teaching. May we always think about our actions before we do them, while we're doing them, and after we're doing them. May we live in accordance with this teaching, and through the power of this merit, may we one day realize the Four Noble Truths in this Gautama Buddha's dispensation. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Namo Buddhaya.